Sometimes it is enough to open a book, to open a door. But the door does not open outward, but inward, to oneself. The Chinese quarter, in the heart of the big city, lived by its own laws. During the day, there was a noisy market, endless rows of spices and fish, the ringing of copper bells on the doors of shops. At night, there was silence, illuminated by red lanterns, the smell of smoke, and the echoing steps of those who did not know sleep. Among these alleys lived a girl named Julio. She was only 15, and fate brought her to a place where life flowed on the edge. But one day, she entered a small bookstore, and from there, her other path began. The Chinatown breathed in its own way. Narrow alleys wound like rivers among shabby houses. Signs with hieroglyphs flickered with red and golden light, and the air was thick with the smell of fish, spices, and smoke. By day, trade boiled here. Markets buzzed, vendors shouted. But at night, everything changed. The streets emptied. Only from the rare tea houses came the clink of porcelain cups, and in the silence, the crackle of neon lamps was especially sharp. Julio loved these nights. She was 15, and she was alone, like a torn leaf thrown onto the stones of the pavement. In the evenings, she would gaze upward for a long time at the narrow strip of sky where stars lit up above the rooftops. They were her only comfort, distant, cold, but real. That evening, she was wandering aimlessly when Seichan's people approached her. Red armbands, stern faces. At first, Julio was frightened, but Seichan, tall, calm, with penetrating eyes, said, "You'll freeze on the street. Come with us." And she went. Life with the Reds turned out to be a strange kind of salvation. They stole, but they did not kill, and in their harsh company, Julio found a corner, food, and something like a family. They gave her small tasks: to distract attention at the market, to deliver a package, to notice a weak lock. Seichan treated her like a younger sister, strict but fair. And yet at night, when the quarter grew still and only the distant thud of festival drums could be heard, Julio lay on a mattress and stared out the window. The sky was narrow, like a slit, but there the stars shone. She whispered to them the thoughts she could trust to no one. "I don't want to steal all my life. I want to be someone else." The turning point came during a raid. The gang went to a warehouse for tiles. A simple theft, no risk. Everything was quiet until a heavy stack slipped from her hands. The tiles crashed onto the stones, the clatter spreading like a celestial downpour. "Quiet," hissed Seichan. He managed to jam the alarm and trick the system. they left unharmed. But in that instant, as Julio was getting into the car, she raised her eyes and saw a man in a black armband in the opposite window. His gaze was cold, piercing, and Julio understood. He had memorized her face. From then on, unease lived in her like a shadow. She felt she was being watched. It was at this time that she met Lion. The Blues held the neighboring quarter, and a chance skirmish brought her straight to them. "And who do we have here?" asked Lion, the young leader, smiling with just the corner of his lips. He was nothing like the others, lively, reckless, his eyes gleaming with playful light. They exchanged only a few words, but Julio's heart tightened. From then on, they began meeting in secret, most often on the rooftops, where they could sit together and look at the stars. Lion laughed, told stories of his childhood, then listened to her dreams. "You're always looking at the sky," he said once. "What are you searching for there?" "Another life," Julio admitted. "One where I don't have to be afraid." He thought for a while and quietly said, "Maybe we'll find it." But the quarter would not let them go. The blacks began to move. Their people spied, asked questions, left hints. Sai-chan frowned, but stayed silent. One day, fleeing from a chase, Julio ran into an unfamiliar alley and found herself before an old door with a faded sign, "Bookshop." She pushed it open and suddenly stepped into another world. Inside, it smelled of paper and tea. The shelves sagged with books. A lamp glowed on the table. Behind the counter stood a woman with gentle eyes. "Hiding?" she asked calmly. "Sit down." Her name was Maria, an immigrant who had arrived many years ago. She had opened a shop that had miraculously survived among the alleys. She never asked unnecessary questions. She simply handed Julio a book. "Try. The world is not always what it seems outside the windows." From then on, Julio came again and again. Sometimes she sat in silence. Sometimes she listened to Maria's stories. The woman spoke simply. "You have the right to choose. You don't have to be part of what destroys you." Those words lodged in her heart like stars in the black sky. When the blacks staged an ambush, everything was decided in a single moment. They lured Julio into a dark alley, and cruelty gleamed in their eyes. "Caught the little bird," one sneered. But suddenly, Lion appeared. He lunged forward, drawing their attention, and shouted, "Run!" Julio, ran out of her mind, and only at the end of the street, gasping for breath, did she stop. When she returned, Sachin told her sternly, "You'll stay with us. Out there, you'll be lost. We are your family." In his voice, there was both truth and fear. But Julio already heard another voice, a calm female one. "You can decide for yourself." The next morning, she came to the bookshop. Maria silently handed her a bundle, a book in a soft cover. "Take it. Let it be with you." Julio nodded. She stepped out into the street and walked away. The quarter buzzed behind her, the smell of fish and spices, the noise of the bazaar, the shouts of gangsters. All of it stayed there. Ahead lay the unknown. But the stars above the rooftops shone so brightly, as if pointing the way. Julio smiled. She knew her journey was only beginning. The page crunched softly under her fingers. The lamp illuminated the room, and the real Julio looked up from her book. The page crunched softly under her fingers. The lamp illuminated the room, and the real Julio looked up from her book. "It's funny," she whispered. "The main character has the same name." She smiled, but it was a thoughtful smile. It felt like a sign that her own plan to run away from home at 15 after a stupid fight with her younger brother might not be a step toward freedom, but a mistake. Julio hugged the book to her chest. The stars were shining outside, and it seemed to her that they were looking straight into her window, as they once did into the story of her namesake. And suddenly, it became clear. There was no need to escape. She just had to wait until one day her destiny would open the door, as this book had opened.